Are sweeteners quietly damaging your DNA? Is Ozempic slowly killing your parents? And why are millions of people suddenly terrified of seed oils, food dyes, and even carrots? These aren't fringe theories anymore. These are the viral headlines shaping how we eat, how we think about health, and how we live. And yet, very few people are asking, what does the science actually say? I'll let you in on a little secret. Nutrition is dangerously oversimplified. In this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Nick Barringer, Army Ranger, performance nutrition expert, and one of the most respected minds in overall health, to break down controversial, high-stakes questions dominating today's nutrition landscape.
In a paper in 2023, the Journal of Toxicology looked at sucralose, and they found it converts to sucralose 6 acetate, which is genotoxic. It can damage DNA cells. It's probably not great for you.
We're not here to follow the hype. We're here to challenge assumptions, unpack the evidence, and figure out what's really at risk when it comes to your health and longevity. This episode can be your filter. Dr. Nick Barringer, nutritional physiologist, which I love that term. You are a great friend, and I'm going to read a little bit about you, which I think that everyone's going to be quite impressed. I know that I am. You previously served as the director of the U.S. Military Baylor University Graduate Program in Nutrition. You also served as an assistant professor at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Really slumming it. You were the first active duty dietitian to graduate from the U.S. Army Ranger School. Wow. And you served with the 75th Ranger Regiment. Well done. One more thing, not trying to embarrass you at all, but you got your degree in dietetics from the University of Georgia and your doctorate in kinesiology from Texas A&M. You are an incredible speaker and a wealth of knowledge. And what I love about you is not only do you research and publish, but you have very practical experience. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That's a great introduction. I'm hoping I can live up to it.
Oh, you will. You already have. I would say you are the only elite military dietitian that exists. Is that fair to say? Maybe there's been 3 others in their entirety.
I mean, there's definitely now. There has been others, and there's others out there, and there's great dietitians working in special operations.
Yes.
So
actually, that's right. The SOCOM has their own team of dietitians. So actually, shout out to you guys.
Yes, Christy Logan.
Yes,
I know
the
Bond.com.
Logan.
Yes.
Christy, we got to get you back on. Oh,
yeah.
You haven't been on, but you should be.
She should be.
Okay.
No, brilliant. So yeah, a lot of great dietitians working in special operations, and I tip my hat to them.
Yes, I suppose I should thank you for your service, and I'll do that now, and everyone else should as well. So thank you. Why did I want you on the show? Well, there's a lot of trending information right now. You and I were sitting down before laughing about how we love our Celsius. I remember when I would visit Shane on post, and it was like Rippets.
Yes.
Rippets.
Yes.
Celsius. What else do they have? They have the definitely Uncrustables.
Yeah.
They have a whole host of items in the military.
Like the little shopettes.
Oh, yes, the shopettes.
Yes.
But
yes.
Where I really wanted to start was sucralose, also known as Splenda. And I was looking at this paper. This is an open access paper in Nature. And the title of the paper is "The Dietary Sweetener Sucralose is a Negative Modulator of T Cell Mediated Responses." And I have to say, I love sucralose. And our doctor, Dr. Lisa Hunt, who's also my doctor, is probably cringing at this because it is an artificial sweetener and it is calorie-free, sugar-free, tastes amazing. And I'm pretty sure that it's damaging my DNA.
Yes. Sadly, that is the case because I'm with you. I love sucralose. I was telling a story about a friend of mine who, was down on it 10 years ago. And I was like, no, there's no worries. There's no concerns.
What did he say it was?
It was ant poison. Shout out to Martin Rooney. So now in a paper in 2023, the Journal of Toxicology looked at sucralose, and they found it converts to sucralose 6 acetate, which is genotoxic. It can damage DNA cells. And it, at a very small dose can do that. And so that is a concern. So, one concern is as the products get processed, could some of that be getting converted naturally in the manufacturing process? But there's also a paper using animal models that have shown in the gut, some bacteria can convert it up to 10% of the sucralose you take in can get converted to that sucralose 6 acetate, which is no bueno.
That's not good. And so sucralose is also Splenda, right?
Yes.
And it's readily available on tables, and it's about 600 times sweeter than sucrose. Would you think, or would you consider it safe in very small amounts? I mean, I'm looking here. It says that the consumption, it can be detected with a consumption of 250 milligrams of sucralose. Again, I don't know what the average amount is in a drink of, say, like Celsius, which, by the way, you and I've been to your house, and you have a lot of Celsius.
You're going to tell me.
Yes.
My wife bought that. She bought that Celsius.
Oh, Catherine. But to be clear, what is the data in humans versus animals?
Yeah, so in the paper, the toxicology paper in particular, they were talking about the microgram level. I can't pull it off the top of my head of like what that specific dose, but it was at the microgram level. So you would exceed that through probably most people consuming their beverages. With that being said, obviously it ended with more research needs to be done. If you're using sucralose to replace sweetened beverages for weight loss at this point, I wouldn't say that's a bad practice, but it's definitely something to consider, and I wouldn't be consuming, diet beverages willy-nilly.
Do you happen to know what else contains sucralose? Is it a Diet Coke situation?
I know Coke Zero, right, uses sucralose. I know a few of the other beverages. I don't drink a lot of sodas, thankfully. so I would have to look at the label. But that would be something to consider. Although it seems like people are starting to use more like stevia, and I am seeing more like monk fruit on labels.
I think that monk fruit and stevia are both great choices. But I will say, unless it's done well, they seem to have an aftertaste. If you were to prioritize artificial sweeteners, sucralose is out for you. I got to let your wife know. Celsius is gone.
Oh, that's
But
tough.
you're okay with monk fruit and stevia.
Yes.
What about aspartame?
Aspartame's another one of those that it's probably not great. I think it's for the World Health Organization classifies it as a possible carcinogen.
That's right.
Right? Is it the category like 2B. So again, if you're somebody trying to lose weight, because I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Like if you have an individual who's drinking a bunch of regular soda and they're really struggling to lose weight, and the diet soda is kind of their gateway to help them lose that weight, as of right now, I wouldn't say, don't do that. But if you can reduce your diet soda intake, I think you should probably do it, especially when it comes to, sadly, sucralose and aspartame.
And I am looking at FDA.gov, and this is the FDA's response to an external safety review of aspartame. And there is something called it's the IARC, and it's the International Agency for Research on Cancer. And I will say, we have to be really careful about how we view some of these big committees and these international agencies, because the IARC also classified red meat as a carcinogen. And if you were to look at David Klurfeld's response to that, who's actually on the committee, they threw out randomized controlled trials, they used epidemiology, and there were things that were really concerning to almost prove a bias, which is unfortunate.
Yes.
And, I don't know if anyone has biases towards aspartame, probably not. But it's just interesting if we're looking at two sides of the story. So it says that the FDA disagrees with the IARC's conclusion that these studies support classifying aspartame as a possible carcinogen to humans. And again, I think that there's a lot that we know and a lot that we don't know, but certainly whole foods is best. But, you know, I am someone who does have some aspartame, I'm sure. Gum.
Yes. Yeah, or xylitol is probably more of what I get from my.
So you make
gum.
better choices than I do.
No, I'm not saying it. I'm
Well
not saying
done. You should. And it's probably good for
Yeah.
the oral microbiome.
Yeah.
When you were looking at the artificial sweeteners like sucralose, did you find something that was actually more surprising? For example, what am I getting at? Something that you weren't expecting. Perhaps its influence on the gut microbiome, perhaps its influence on immunity. Was there anything that kind of stuck out to you as people are just trying to make decisions?
Well, the gut microbiome, I kind of knew. I'd seen that research. The DNA damage and the leaky gut, that's what's concerning, and that was what was more recent in the 2023 paper. So again, it does give me pause. It makes me, okay, let's reconsider it and look at it. I don't want to, discourage though people who are using diet sodas as a way to lose weight, right? Is a way to control their caloric intake, because I still think that seems to be a net positive. But as of right now, yeah, we should definitely investigate the artificial sweeteners. More research needs to be done to look at it, to be like, hey, is it really good for us long term? And then to your point of what's that dose look like? Is it 1 Celsius a day, half a Celsius a day, or or what is that, right?
What about food dyes like red dye number 40, yellow number 5? Are these harmful or overhyped?
That's another one that they're probably not the best, particularly when you look at the research like with children and like hyperactivity and ADHD. I taught my daughter to read the labels, and she'll find I did. Yeah. So she'll see it. She'll be like, Daddy, this has red 40 in it, and the dyes I think are an easier stance to take on, because you don't really need them.
That's a great point.
You don't. Yeah. It's not like I'm craving a soda, and so now I need, I want to scratch that itch, but I want to get it calorie free, kind of like with the artificial sweeteners. I feel like you don't need the dyes in your life. So if you can get, a beet-based dye product, why not go that route? And so that's how we do it in the Barringer household. So
I love that. That's just practical advice. And I will say that red dye number 40, it looks like it's made from petroleum. And it's a synthetic color additive used in foods and beverages to give it a cherry red color. It looks like it is the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act prohibits the FDA from approving a color additive that is ingested if it causes cancer in animals or humans when ingested. And then you look at some of the further data, and the dye, again, this is also depending on the dose. It seems to cause cancer in rats. I guess this was from 30 years ago. But the FDA did make a decision to revoke the authorization of use. And this was from a petition in 2022. I suppose the question is, why does it take so long to remove from our food system?
Science. I mean, you've done studies. You know how long they take.
Yeah, that
to
takes
recruit.
forever, and there's no guarantee that it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, the IRB process alone, right? And then, to recruit participants and then get it. And then, okay, now you've published, your findings. Now somebody else needs to repeat the study, et cetera. So it takes time,
Do we know why? Have you looked at the data in terms of hyperactivity in the dyes?
I have not dug deep on that one.
I'm curious.
Of like what it's doing to like a child neurologically, whether it's interfering with some of that signaling, that I can't speak to intelligently.
It looks like, from what I'm reading, and this is on yellow dye number 5, and there are certain children that might be more sensitive to these dyes than others, which would make sense. I'm sure with sucralose, that individuals that have a very robust microbiome, they probably can tolerate it without any issues. But for those that are sensitive, it looks like from the data, it can cause irritability, maybe restlessness or sleep disturbances. And, I really like what you said, that if you don't have to use food dyes right now, we don't have to. Why would we?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you ready for another major bomb?
I am ready.
I don't know. Are seed oils like canola and soybean oil toxic, and how do you, as someone who is a nutritional physiologist who has worked with some of the highest performing individuals, begin to pick away at what is data and what is hype?
I have yet to find, and we've talked about this, right? Like that smoking gun study that they are this terrible, horrible thing. With that being said, there are some papers that show, especially when they get oxidized at high heat, that can be problematic. And we get so much omega-6 in our diet already that, an excess of it might not be optimal. There are papers, a lot of times that link omega-6 to inflammation, but there was one study that looked at it and they didn't see any, movement in C-reactive protein or anything like that when you took in more omega-6s. So kind of still, to be determined. But I would say a practical application here would be, there's probably some better options out there. I love avocado oil. Use that as pretty heat stable. If I'm going to put something on my salads rather than a canola or soybean oil, I'm going to use olive oil. But if that's what you have, then that is. But I would just say there's some better options. Even coconut oil is more, even though it's higher in saturated fat. There are papers that show even elevated coconut oil intake doesn't affect your LDL like other saturated fats. So, I would say there's other options that I would utilize over seed oils, but I won't say, that they're inherently poisonous.
I think it's a really important point. We had Kevin Mackey on, who is the former president of the Lipid Association.
He's got to ask.
I mean, he was got to ask. And I asked him, and really looking at the data, and he's published a handful of really great articles on this, that the data wasn't there to support that the seed oils and canola oil and soybean oils, these polyunsaturated oils, were inherently bad, which I think is surprising. Again, they are unnatural, they're processed. I absolutely agree with what you're saying in terms of this high heat processing. Our consumption of them have increased exponentially over the last 30 years or so. Is it really this ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids in our diet that's driving inflammation? And also, what about the foods that these seed oils are in? Possibly baked goods, all these other processed type foods.
Yeah, you're definitely getting a lot of it in there. And so any way that you could reduce the consumption of omega-6 and then obviously increase the consumption of omega-3, I'd say is going to, point your health in the right direction.
I'm always looking for easy, meaningful ways to support my health, especially gut health. Since, of course, that's where good health starts. Well, that and muscle. That's why I've added Amra Colostrum to my iced coffee. It's a whole food supplement packed with over 400 bioactive nutrients like protective antibodies, prebiotics, and peptides that help strengthen immunity, support digestion, and optimize performance. Amra uses a unique technology to preserve these nutrients in their purest, most bioavailable form, which is why it stands out from anything else I've seen on the market. I also love that they are third-party tested, so you can trust everything that's listed is actually in the product. Go to tryarmra.com/Dr. Lyon or use the code Dr. Lyon at checkout.
But again, I would never say that, seed oils are poisonous or, kind of like you might see on the internet.
I would also really agree with you on that. And I think that the data just doesn't support that. In the Barringer household, do you guys happen to have canola oil or any of those other high heat cooking oils?
We have, you've seen our oils.
I'm just putting you on the spot.
We have avocado is what I use. I use mostly avocado. I use butter. Butter is delicious. It does pretty well in heat. And then, putting on the salads, a lot of olive oil.
If someone was going to use these seed oils, how would you say, what are some other foods that would be great for increasing the intake of omega-3?
In terms of omega
Just food,
3s,
yeah.
food, yeah. I mean,
To say
obviously
they're
fish.
balance it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, any sort of fish you can get in the diet. I love sardines, and I do a lot of like nutrition talks, and I always tell people this. I'm like, look, sardines are great. They're small, non-predatory fish, so very, very low in mercury. Right, you don't have to worry about the heavy metals with them. High dose of omega 3s. They travel well. You can throw them in your bag in those little cans. And trust me, everybody listening to me right now, try this. Get on an airplane, open up a can of sardines.
Nobody wants
you
to...
always make a friend every time.
First of all, you should not be allowed to fly if you are opening up the can of sardines. Nobody wants to sit next to you. But
you always make a friend. Quote me on that.
Questionable. And not a nice friend. They probably are really, they're done with it. But I love what you're saying. You're making a practical statement. And we do travel with sardines. I can't say that I eat them. My kids love them.
You've never opened it up on a plane?
Of course, no. Absolutely
Just one
not.
time.
No. I'm still allowed to fly. But I think it's a great source of protein. And also you can get calcium, omegas. And again, you don't worry about heavy metals, which, there is a lot of discussion about heavy metals in protein powders.
Yes.
Should we worry about that?
I think so. 100%. Like, especially it was the plant proteins that were the highest, and some of them that were classified as organic. So you should know where everything you put in your body comes from. So if you're going to take whey protein or you're going to take a plant protein, you should be aware of what that company's practices are. Is it NSF certified safe for sport? I like to use that with myself and my athletes. So make sure that it's tested and it's heavy metal free.
Why do you think there were more heavy metals found in plant-based proteins?
Because the soil, wherever you're sourcing those plants from, whatever the practices are in that country, you're going to get more heavy metals. There was at one point when I was at the U.S. Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine, we were looking at honey, like using local honey where soldiers were to possibly, reduce the effect of some allergies. And that was the other thing we found is like same thing with honey. In those, certain countries that maybe don't have the strictest codes in terms of what happens to those metals from plant processing, the honey had a lot higher content of heavy metals.
That's not surprising. I don't know if you know this about me, but I use honey all the time. So I use something called Manicora honey.
Oh, yes.
And they test, have you had it? It's
yes.
amazing. So they test it. They test it for contaminants, which would make a lot of sense because you're eating something that's highly concentrated. I do worry about plant proteins. They haven't been around for human consumption for a long period of time. You're consolidating a ton of bioactive ingredients from the pea protein, not just the protein, but there are other, again, bioactive ingredients, just like with whey.
Right.
Whey protein has lactoalbumin, lactoferrin. These are other compounds that are positive for the immune system and various other processes in the body. I don't know. And again, is whey processed? It is, but
yes.
It comes off of a practice that we've been utilizing, which is cheese forever. But these plant-based protein powders are really manufactured, and we're concentrating a form of protein that we would not find in nature at all.
I had never thought about that, but no, that's a great point. And for me too, again, because I have no issues consuming animal products, but just the flavor profile I find in the plant protein, because I've tried them, it's just it's always chalky. I can't get away from that.
When your clients, when you're working with a military operator or a CEO or someone like that, and they can't tolerate whey protein, whether it's isolate or a concentrate, and they don't like the flavor of a plant-based protein, is there something else that you suggest for them to do?
I have not had that situation, thankfully. With that, then it would be, some sort of, maybe we would go with a protein snack in terms of, there are a lot of different, for lack of better description, like, meat sticks that.
I know a couple of those.
Yeah, right. That are
Shout
easy.
out to my husband. No, just kidding.
Yeah, a lot of, poor Shane. A lot of, dehydrated, like, meat products. I know there's even like a salmon jerky that company makes. And so I find a lot of those simple solutions and stuff they can kind of keep at their desk. But luckily, I haven't had an issue where anybody, couldn't consume whey protein.
Well, for our patients that cannot consume whey protein, we typically use some kind of animal blend. There's egg white protein. There's animal-based. So they'll have a beef isolate, which is obviously collagen's not a complete protein, but there's egg white protein. There's other animal source protein powders that they don't taste weird because it sounds gross, but they're amazing and they're really just easy to consume. So if you're listening and you're thinking, I can't use a whey protein, I don't like a rice pea blend or a pea or a hemp, there are animal-based protein powders out there, that can be totally usable. Speaking of eggs and diet, what are your thoughts on the best diet for, let's just say, for building and maintaining muscle, someone who is 40 years plus?
I know someone who's 40. Yes, I look at that person in the mirror every day. I see that individual.
And you go, gosh, I am so good looking.
No, I mean, this isn't going to be probably anything earth-shattering, right? I try to eat, lean, mostly sources of protein.
Which would be what?
So I'm getting, I love bison.
Me too.
I love elk. That's one of the great things about living in Texas. I think you go to the grocery store, we can get venison, we can get elk, we can get bison pretty easily. So I have those. I might even made that one time on the grill. I don't know if
No, what you made was pizza.
Pizza. Okay, I did. I made pizza.
You made pizza.
I made pizza. All right.
So by the way, listeners, watchers, Nick Barringer, again, military family, very, very good friend of ours. And our kids are close to the same age. We just all have a blast, which makes things even more fun.
Yeah. So I guess I made pizza that time. But normally
burnt pizza, by the way, it was burnt. It was a little overdone.
Oh yeah, that was okay. That wasn't the best representation. I was learning a new grill. But otherwise, bison, venison, I like that. Grass-fed beef, steak, eggs, and then fish. A lot of salmon, and then vegetables. That's it.
Some fruit. What about carbs?
Oh yeah, some fruit, rice. Sourdough bread. I like sourdough bread.
You guys eat a lot of fermented stuff at your household.
We do. That's another one. I like my sauerkraut. My wife's half Korean, so we have kimchi. I like the fermented like pickles and olives. So I do get a lot of that in, and then yogurts as well.
When you are thinking about designing a diet for someone, again, just picking someone about building or maintaining muscle over the age of 40, just arbitrarily pick that number. How do you think about how much protein they should have? How do you balance the carbohydrates to support muscle health? What are some of the thoughts and practices that you tell people to follow?
Well, for the protein, I think we're on the same sheet of music, like the whole gram per about pound of ideal body weight. Like I'm going around there. Protein is the focus I build around. Also fiber, trying to get people to get 35 grams of fiber, 40 grams of fiber.
Do you know what the average American intake is?
Probably less than 20.
I'm sure. I know that we're supposed to have 25 grams per 2,000 calorie diet, but I think fiber intake is very suboptimal.
Oh yes, yeah.
In the American diet,
probably more suboptimal than protein, right?
You know what? That's absolutely right. I was looking at have you ever seen the Healthy Eating Index?
Yes,
you have. The Healthy Eating Index is, I believe it's part of the dietary guidelines, or it's in it's kind of under the umbrella. And the Healthy Eating Index defines what we should have and where we're at. And I was recently looking at the data because I was giving a talk, and it was something like 95% of Americans are not eating enough fruits and vegetables.
Oh, yeah.
Period. And to answer your protein question, 45% of individuals were below the Healthy Eating Index recommendation for dietary protein. And I'm going to point something else out. The Healthy Eating Index, the protein is higher than the RDA. it's not 0.8 grams per kg.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And there's this constant flurry of people saying that we're eating too much protein. The data doesn't support that. 45% were below that recommendation for the healthy eating index.
No, I could see that. And so, I mean, that's why, like, I build, kind of my meal plan for people, like, around, like, protein and then fiber as well. And then with carbohydrates, again, I think we have a similar stance in that I'm like...
More is better?
Yeah, no, more is better. Especially, again, is that individual over the age of 40, I have to earn my carbohydrates now more than ever. Whereas, Nick at 20, 25, I didn't really think about that as much. But, as you get older, I think you do. You have to respect carbohydrates. Otherwise, you're going to end up with type 2 diabetes, right?
Yes. And right now, what I'm hearing you say is your protein is close to 1 gram per pound target body weight. It's interesting. I always use the term ideal body weight. And as I'm thinking about it, there is a formula for ideal body weight, but you and I are not talking about that. Right. We're talking about your personal ideal body weight. You could swap that out for target body weight.
Yes.
It is where you feel your best. It's as simple as that. And when you are working with someone and thinking about how to optimize their body composition, because let's face it, over the age of 40, people seem to gain weight. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. And if we care about health and we have to take action and we really have to design a mindful nutrition plan that shouldn't be overcomplicated. 1 gram per pound target body weight. The RDA sets our carbohydrates at 130 grams per day, which, have you looked at the data? The obligatory carbohydrate use in the body for glucose is 80 grams a day.
Wow.
And the RDA is set at 130 to make up for the standard deviation of, to cover everybody. But the dietary guidelines, now this is going to get a little word salady and kind of number heavy, but I want you guys who are listening to really think about this, because the recommendations that we're hearing and what it's set as, if the body requires 80 grams of carbs, say for brain red blood cells, number one, carbohydrates are not essential. Your body can make it through gluconeogenesis,
yes,
through protein that you eat. Also, carbohydrate disposal. Let's talk about this for 1 second, because I've done all the numbers with myself and my colleague, Dr. Donna Lehman. And for a sedentary muscle, the glucose disposal over a 2-hour period for a sedentary individual is not above 40 grams of carbohydrates.
Wow.
Meaning, if you are not training and you haven't worked out, you are committing carbicide. Your body cannot dispose of more than 40 grams in a 2-hour period. Anything above that begins to distort metabolism and you store it as fat. But the dietary guidelines, their percentage of carbohydrate ingestion for a 2,000 calorie person is set at 45 to 55.
Yeah.
So 45 to 65 grams of carbs. So on the low end, it's 225 grams of carbs a day. That's an additional, 3 hours of exercise over the 130 grams? You're a pretty fit person. Are you doing that kind of exercise?
No, not always. Well, chasing a 2-year-old is surprisingly, but yeah, no, I mean,
Axel is not that fast, my friend.
You haven't seen him lately. He's great.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I mean, wow, that's there lies the problem, right? About every snack. I'm trying to think of like what snack bar or general, a bag of chips, right? You're going to probably exceed 30, over 40 grams.
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty easily, right?
And it just, again, I think that you and I have the same mission, which is how do we help people get to their healthiest version? And with all the information out there, and you've got the RDA, which is recommended dietary allowance, and then you have the dietary guidelines, we're all trying to make sense of what individuals should have, especially as we get older. When you're young, you're very anabolic. You have lots of hormones. Your son Axel could probably look at a little piece of chicken and he's anabolic. He's growing. But for us, we have to I look great for 25. For us, we have to, go ahead and you can laugh at that. It's hilarious. But no, frankly, we have to learn to adjust our nutrition and kind of tune out the noise. Because if we go back to the fundamentals and we just look at the science, the minimum, the RDA is 130 grams. That's above what we need, especially if we are inactive. And then the dietary guidelines, we are fighting an obesity epidemic, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, but the carbohydrate recommendations and what we're willing to tolerate is absolutely astronomical. And from a metabolic standpoint, we are not balancing our food with our muscle needs. And I think that that's where the real problem is. And our guidelines are at 45 to 65% of our calories should be coming from carbohydrates.
Well, and I think part of that is when you look at those guidelines, you're saying like carbohydrates. It's kind of like if you just say red meat. Are we talking about 70-30 hamburgers? Or are we talking about elk? When we talk about carbohydrates, are we talking about a bag of chips? Or are we talking about an apple and a banana?
Great point.
Right. So I also think that's in there to be considered as well. Because fiber is going to slow that rate of glucose into the bloodstream. But yeah, no, I mean, either way, yeah, we're probably overdoing it. A lot of people are overdoing it on carbohydrates just based on that inactivity.
Just based on that alone, and we already know that 50% of the population isn't moving.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as a healthy sedentary individual because that's a disease state in and of itself. So when you think about carbohydrate dosing, do you think about carbohydrate dosing for your CEOs or people that you're working with? Again, the austere environment of a military operator, I think the biggest challenge that we're dealing with, and I had Jess Gwen on.
Yes.
She's amazing. Shout out to her. We did an episode. We should link to that up here. You guys can check that out. And the challenge with the military operator, right, in these austere environments is tactical individuals. You can't even get them to consume enough because they are moving so much. So it's at one extreme to another. But from a carbohydrate standpoint, do you think if someone is not training and they are sitting at their desk, how do you dose carbohydrates throughout the day? So you start with 1 gram per pound of target body weight, which, anyone can calculate that. The carbohydrate, how do you begin to teach people that?
I usually, and it's simple, kind of look at a plate. I use kind of I'll put a plate in front of them. And if they're not that active, half their plate is a non really heavy carbohydrate like vegetable. Like I take peas, potatoes, corn. I put those in the kind of the carbohydrate category. I put a quarter is a carbohydrate and a quarter is a protein, and then we go from there in structure and kind of like, okay, so you can put half your plate, your broccoli, your carrots, your cauliflower, your kale, your other leafy greens. You can put your starch, your potatoes, your rice, here, and then here, this is where we're going to put our sirloin, our chicken, our turkey, what have you. And it's like, if you kind of eat like that, you're going to be doing better than most of the population. And then if they train a little more, I open up the carbohydrates, by a third.
By a third, meaning you increase the carbohydrate?
Yes. Yeah. So if it's, if you have like one of those CEOs or executive athletes, or I've worked with people who like they do intelligence, right? So they look at screens and they take in information. But some of them like to run, some of them like to ruck, and so if you're doing like 10 miles, then obviously you can have more carbohydrates, right?
Nick and I talk all about carbohydrates in this episode, and one of those carbohydrates that we talk about is honey. And I will tell you what, I actually have been using honey for about a year, but not just any honey. And this episode is brought to you by the honey that I use, which is Manacora. When I've had a long or taxing day, which feels like every day, and I need some extra fuel, I turn to Manacora. I think of Manuka honey as a functional carbohydrate. It's not just sugar. It's packed with prebiotics and antioxidants that support digestive health and your immune system. So it's serving a dual purpose, not just adding empty carbs. And one of my favorite ways to enjoy it is with apples, with my family, and of course, peanut butter. We use this incredible honey in teas, especially when someone has a sore throat because of its powerful medicinal properties. Honestly, we use it anytime we need a natural sweetener. You can check out their website to learn more. Head to manacora.com/Dr. Lyon to get $25 off the starter kit, which comes with an MGO 850 plus Manuka honey jar, 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook. You guys will absolutely love this incredible honey.
But those days that you're just sitting in front of the computer screen and you just do a quick weightlifting session, 30 minutes at the end of the workday, it's going to be a little less. And so that's kind of how I play it, and then see how they respond. Because I find, and if there's any dietitian out there who has this code cracked, please share it. You got to experiment with the individual a little bit. It's like, okay, Gabrielle, we're going to do this. Eat this way for a week. Tell me how you feel. Feeling low energy, feeling high energy. All right, let's, up this a little bit, come back on this. How's your weight going? If your goal is to lose weight, how much weight are you losing? If you're losing weight too fast, that's a problem as well.
And why is that a problem?
Because you're probably losing muscle mass.
Terrible. Yes.
Right.
So with this Ozempic craze, which by the way, I think Ozempic and these GLP-1s are tremendous drugs.
Yes.
But the rate of weight loss is so fast that 50% could be lean tissue. And lean tissue could be bone, it could be organ, and it could be muscle.
Yes.
Not good.
Then, right. And then as these individuals age, or if they already are older, now increased risk for falls, all those other issues. So I definitely think the medications are to be respected. I mean, you're practicing physician, so you're the more appropriate person to speak on this than I am. But yeah, I think it's a tremendous tool, and I listened to your podcast with Mike Israetel.
Yeah.
I say that name right? Man, that was a great podcast. You guys talking about kind of the future of what's coming down the pipeline. So I think that it's exciting, and it's a tool for individuals who previously really struggled to lose weight. But it's definitely something to be respected, and it should be paired with exercise and protein and good nutrition.
For the carbs, I agree with you 1,000,000%. Is there a baseline recommendation that you don't go below? I'll give you an example. So Ted Naiman is a friend, and he is really one of the OGs in this space, and he doesn't go below 100 grams of carbs a day. Do you have a threshold for where
I think that would be
operate?
Yeah. I mean, I think that would make sense for most people is not to go above 100. Yeah.
And then, or below or above?
Or pardon me, below. Yes, thank you for correcting me. Yeah, below. Yeah, 100. I mean, I think usually I would say like 150, but 100, I'm okay with that. I wouldn't.
You would not go below that.
No.
And I was looking at some of this other data, and basically, you'll burn, from what I read, and I'm curious as to how you do it, because you did. You co-authored, and it was the ISSN, which is the International Society for Sports Nutrition, position stand on the tactical athlete nutrition. This came out in 2022. And the ISSN, they're amazing. They come out with these guidelines that really help put together an evidence-based view. Would you say, and from what I understand, from 40 to 70 grams of carbohydrates, typically you have to be above 120 beats per minute, and you can dispose of depending on how intense that activity is. Do you dose carbohydrates based on their level of activity in that way? Do you calculate, do you think, okay, this person is going to be doing this kind of run training because they're going to be training for 2 hours. If they're going at a slow pace, they're going to be going through 40 grams of carbs per hour. How do you think about that for someone who's listening who wants to put it into practical application?
Yeah, usually I think the general rule is 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Now, it depends on that individual, right? If you got like a marathoner like your husband who's trying to go as fast as possible, then it might go beyond that, and that's mostly I think the lead person you'd want to kind of look at in that would be Dr. Asker Ukendrup, right? Because he's done some things with his athletes that I think they've went up to like 90 grams per hour runners, I know there was a paper with, I think it was mountain bikers that went above 100, which would be hard on the gut. But again, we're talking about if you're trying to go fast as possible, which the average, generalist is not. And so I would say 30 to 60 would be where I would say.
30 to 60. So for example, if someone is starting at 100 grams, if they're maybe a small person like myself, versus maybe someone like you, do you have about 150 grams a day? You probably don't have to count at this stage. You just have to be mindful. Is that true?
Try to be mindful. I don't track my macros. I just kind of eat, and I'm like, all right, I want some green on my plate. I use the plate like, okay, what should my plate look like? And that's how I eat every day. And then when I'm snacking, I do think about getting all my macros in like a snack, where I rarely, unless I'm like trying to just get some fuel for a quick workout, rarely do I just eat like pure carbs, right? Maybe I have a banana or have something like that, but usually it's, something with a cheese or something with nuts or something. I'm always like trying to get protein and fat in there as well.
And is that to slow down the absorption, to blunt an insulin response?
Yeah. It's that, and then satiety, right? Because, like you said, is like, my metabolism at 45 is a lot different than 25. It's so, before it's like I could eat as much as I wanted. You never, you try to gain weight and you couldn't gain weight. Where now I can like look at a pizza and I feel like I gain weight. So I got to be more mindful of that.
And for carbohydrate intake, do you care about when people have it? Does it need to be before exercise? Does it have to be after? What does the data say in terms of peak output for performance?
You definitely want to have enough on board when you start, but I would say the most important timing, especially if we're looking at like long endurance events, is like during, and then for recovery, post. And there was a paper that just came out, and I forgot the author, but it was, talking about that nutrient timing, and then looking, getting those carbohydrates in, and then it looked at performance, I think over 2 days. And, if you didn't get those carbohydrates within like, I think it was 4 hours, it affected your performance negatively over the next 2 days. So there is something to that.
Fascinating.
Yeah, there is something to that, that post, window, post-exercise window, to kind of replenish that muscle glycogen that, who was that, Dr. John Ivey, work. So yes, especially if you're dealing with athletes.
I think that's interesting because the data for protein, it doesn't matter.
Right.
The protein is within that day. There may be some reason to get protein in closer to after your workout, and they're few and far between. This would be in an individual who potentially is on a low protein diet, is an older individual on a lower protein diet, or perhaps exhaustive exercise. But other than that, for the most part, as long as you're getting it in within that day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But do you think, and again, we can pull up this data, maybe I would love to do a full episode on glycogen. It'd be so cool. Do you think that it's the rate of glycogen repletion that, why would it have to be? Yeah, why do you think it matters? I don't have an answer. Maybe we get back to that.
Yeah. I think we have to get back to it. I'd have to look.
Does hydration affect recovery?
Yes. Hydration affects recovery, and so that's why the cheapest tool you got that look at hydration is that scale, right? Weighing yourself before and after, especially if you're listening to this and you're in Texas. Right now the weather's manageable, right? But give it a month, give it 2 months, and it's going to be pretty miserable, and you're going to lose a lot of fluids.
Actually, that's how I heard about you for the first time. Do you know that? I was helping a guy get through buds. Okay. And I called Andy Galpin, and I said, Andy, how do you think about hydration, very specific hydration protocols for these guys that are going to go in through Hell Week? And he said, you know what he said? And I hope you're listening, Andy. I don't know. You need to talk to Nick Barringer. And then he connected me with you. And this was many years ago. From a hydration standpoint, how much water, and is it just water? Do we need electrolytes? Because I use electrolytes.
Yeah.
Number one, I can't drink all that water. I'm out. But you give me some electrolytes like Element with some salt, magnesium, and I feel like I'm less likely to cramp. I feel as if I actually sweat more. I don't know if there is a correlation between hydration and sweating more, meaning if you're not hydrated, you might sweat less. I don't know. But what do you recommend for hydration?
Yes. Half the body weight. The baseline is like half your body weight in ounces, right?
In ounces. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of baseline. Then, I tell them also track it. I like using the scale pre and post because, hydration is one of those, it is going to vary. Are we talking about somebody who works out in a gym in Houston for 45 or 60 minutes during the summer, or somebody, like Shane, who might go out for like a 4-hour run in the heat?
I have gray hair by the time he's back.
Yeah.
I'm going out for a run. It's like 5 years later he comes back.
But so the fluid loss that he's, experiencing in this heat in Texas. And then the same with the electrolytes. Like he would be somebody that, he has to have electrolytes. Like if he's doing a 4-hour run and, here. So I think it depends on the individual. And then the last piece that, you hit on is, what do they like?
Could you hydrate with just water? It'd be
if
very
your
difficult,
diet,
right?
Yeah. Most people can. Yes, I would say most people, you can certainly hydrate with just water because you're getting electrolytes from the food you eat. But again, the extreme, if you're out and it's 90 degrees and you're running for 4 hours, you're probably going to lose more than you got in your food, right? Unless you chow down on some like salty pretzels right before, because, he could be losing like a gram of sodium an hour.
And it's not just sodium you're replacing, right?
Right,
I
magnesium,
think that you were,
potassium.
Yeah, I think you were talking about that there's a way to test. So your sweat composition is going to be different than mine.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So there's different companies that have looked at that. I used a Gatorade sweat patch one time. I was tracking it when I was running in San Antonio.
That's really cool. Can you tell us what that is?
It was just a patch you put on your arm, and then as your sweat drips into it as you run, you scanned it with your phone, and then you looked at it, and it would give you your
so
sodium
cool.
content. But there's different companies, like I know Nix Biosensors. There's others out there. I'm not connected to any brand, but I know they're looking at this, and it is kind of nice because athletes, where your diet's going to affect your sweat rate too, or what that composition looks like.
Thank you to OneSkin for sponsoring this episode. I only bring on sponsors whose products I genuinely use and love, and OneSkin is one that I'm truly excited about. I first discovered it after seeing one of my girlfriend's skin completely transform. I asked her what she was using, and it was OneSkin. I said, hook a sister up. I have struggled with texture and dryness on my face and body, and since using OneSkin, I have seen real improvements in skin texture. What makes OneSkin stand out is their use of novel, clean, science-backed ingredients, especially their clinically studied peptide that supports DNA repair and targets the root cause of skin aging. And right now, I'm loving their broad spectrum face sunscreen. I also use their eye cream and their topical body supplement. It's rare to find skincare that delivers real results for both face and body. And this has become a go-to in my routine. You all can get 15% off with the code Dr. Lyon. Go to oneskin.com and get 15% off the code with Dr. Lyon. And here's what I will tell you. I have tried just about everything. I have landed on OneSkin. I think that their product is amazing, especially as it relates to summer, because summer is coming up. And in this episode, we talk all about sucralose and DNA damage. Well, I'll tell you what, I think that DNA damage also not just affects internally, but affects us externally. And I don't want any of that. So if you want to have great looking skin, head over to oneskin.com and use the code Dr. Lyon. Wait, that I did not know that.
Yes.
Diet affects the composition of your sweat. What I always perceived or what I thought was that each individual has a unique sweat composition, but that's not true. Is that true, or is it really?
There's definitely going to be some individual variance, but again, going back to if you go out to eat, right, and eat a bunch of salty food, and we get you out in the heat, and we test your sweat, it's going to be higher sodium than it normally would be, right? So there is that, but a lot of it with the electrolyte beverages, I just find it like what people like. in terms of, what do you want to reach for and what are you going to drink?
Except Gatorade with red dye number 40.
Except that. Yeah, except Gatorade.
And sucralose and a little bit of yellow dye number 5.
Yeah. So do they still use red dye number 40?
I have no idea.
Okay, we'll have to see.
It just they
yeah.
Out, yes.
So again, if you like, there's a lot of different brands out there.
How would they get it from their food if they're eating not enough fruits and vegetables? Would they get enough magnesium and potassium? I feel like those are nutrients of concern, at least magnesium.
Yes, certainly. That would be a challenge. You get, potassium, again, from celery, from other things. But yeah, if they're not eating fruits and vegetables at all.
When was the last time you ate celery?
I'll have celery on occasion.
That's a good question. I don't think I've had celery since 1980.
Really?
Yeah, man.
I like celery.
But I was looking up what foods actually have potassium because everyone thinks about a banana. I think I landed on potato.
Yes, potatoes
as a
have
very high potassium food. Have you ever used is it sodium chloride or potassium chloride? It's new salt. Have you ever used that?
I have not.
I haven't used it in a really long time, but what are the other foods that would have, again, I could look that up, potassium or magnesium as we're thinking about if someone doesn't want to take a whole bunch of stuff, what?
Yeah, but, I mean, for potassium, celery was one. I think it's like 4 stalks equals 1 banana. For magnesium, nuts. I know nuts are.
We didn't talk about fat, which we definitely, spinach, orange, avocado.
Yeah, there you go.
Beetroot, potatoes. Okay, those are all potassium-rich foods. It looks like WebMD has a whole list.
Has a breakdown.
Yep, and you can go to the USDA website. They typically do it. What about fat? We did not finish we talked about carbs, we talked about protein. How do you dose fat, if at all?
It fills in everything. I don't know if I've ever had anybody really have to track fat outside of somebody with high like LDL, like watch their, saturated fat. I, definitely am not scared of fat. you need fat.
It's been really overhyped.
Right.
You're saying.
And so I just
so
try
you don't add any extra fat, basically.
Yeah. I'm not one to add any extra fat to anything. Like I don't put butter in my coffee or anything like that.
You and I'm surprised. I actually didn't realize how close our dietary recommendations are. How we believe that, and how we do it in clinic is we start with protein. We identify the needs of muscle. We identify if they are aging, if they are sedentary. Sedentary people actually need more protein, which is surprising. And then there's an increased need as they become more of an elite athlete.
Yes.
And then we go to carbohydrate for exactly the reasons that you talked about, increased fiber. And then we don't actually care about fat. It's personal choice.
Right.
It falls where it falls.
Well, you know where I learned that from, and maybe you read the same book, Forever Strong. If you read it,
I've never read that book.
Really good. It's a really good book.
I never read that book.
Very, very user friendly. It's even got some great recipes in it. Just saying.
That is so funny. Yes, I've never read that book. I actually really love that conceptual way of putting together a diet because you don't have to overthink it.
It shouldn't be that complicated.
It shouldn't.
Right? It was, and that's what when I give like group classes for nutrition, I say, all my 20 years of being a dietitian, I find that it's very rare that it's a lack of information. It's more a lack of implementation, right? Mm-hmm. So it's more about teaching people those small little habits that they can do daily to make that change versus being like, broccoli's good. You should probably have less ice cream. Like most people intuitively know what they should be doing. So. And
I don't know anymore, though. I think we've got the carnivore diet, we have the vegan diet, paleo. There's just this, I think people are really deeply confused. And I think that they're afraid to make the wrong choice.
Yeah, well, part of it, I think with all the different diets is, again, that the practical evidence-based approach mm-hmm. isn't probably going to sell as many books as if you can say something extreme. Obviously that's what catches people's attention. I don't understand why the carnivore diet would be that confusing when we have all this data on fruits and vegetables. if anybody has any paper out there that has shown people get sick more often if they eat broccoli, please share it with me.
He wants it because he doesn't want to eat any more broccoli.
No, I love broccoli. No, I love broccoli. And then, but even like the carnivore diet, what does that meat consist of? Right? There was just and you might have seen this. There was a case study of an individual doing a carnivore diet, had yellow nodules on the skin. Come to find out it was cholesterol. I think his cholesterol was over 1,000. But his carnivore diet was just straight like hamburgers, like fatty hamburgers, which would be a lot different than experience than if somebody was just eating like elk and deer. And so again, with all these things, it's like, okay, what are we putting in our body? Kind of like with the carbohydrates. Are your carbohydrates coming from fruits and vegetables, or is it coming from, chips and other snack foods? So what is the composition of that diet?
And that makes a lot of sense. And I will say from a carnivore diet standpoint, where I have actually seen it effective is in a way of elimination. And
Love that.
I have seen it be extremely effective for individuals with small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. I have seen it be effective for individuals that have really impaired gut microbiome or a infection, a lot of pathogens, because it seems that the bacteria, I don't know, the extra fiber seems to really dysregulate them. And you put them on a carnivore diet for 4 to 6 weeks, find out what pathology is happening, test them for parasites, treat the parasites, begin to then add back in fruits and vegetables, and they seem to do a lot better. I think that there is a genetic variation between what works for individuals, and it's probably based on that gut microbiome.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's how I think about it.
No, and what you described is very reasonable. And I'm with you 100% in terms of like, you said, you're like, all right, it's an elimination diet. We're taking everything back to try to figure things out, resetting, but then we're going to add back the fruits and vegetables.
Because, I do think that food diversity is important. Fiber, and I'm looking at this list of magnesium. What would we ingest? So it says approximately 30 to 40% of the dietary magnesium that is consumed is absorbed by the body, which seems like that's great absorption. And then I'm looking at the list of what contains magnesium, and I can't say I really eat any of them. Pumpkin seeds.
You don't eat pumpkin seeds?
No. 156 milligrams. No, I don't eat it. Almonds, don't eat those either. Cashews. Pumpkin seeds far and away seem to be really high. And then a bunch of nuts, fortified cereal. Not a ton of great magnesium type sources. Raisins, I love raisins, only 23 milligrams. Perhaps magnesium would be, and I think a large portion of the population is deficient in magnesium. It says that green leafy vegetables, such as spinach, I can't even tell you the last time I ate spinach. You guys better invite me over.
Yeah, we're going to make spinach next time.
But that's interesting that I can see based on this list why people would be deficient in some of these nutrients for that reason.
Yeah, and I think magnesium is a reasonable thing, especially like you talk about sleep. You had Dr. Allison Barringer on. I listened to that episode. She's so amazing.
So do you need 4 hours of sleep? Are you one of those people that have that snip that she was talking about?
What do you think? Do I look like it?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, it would be awesome because, I have a 2-year-old if I could run off of 4 hours of sleep, but 100%. I need like 7 to 8. Like I need my 7 to 8.
So Allison Barringer is a neuroscientist, active duty. She's amazing. She is a sleep specialist, and she did her dissertation was in clock genes and skeletal muscle. Anyway, she worked on a study where it looked at the SNPs of rangers, and they seemed to have this genetic mutation that allowed them to function well without increasing inflammatory markers on something like 4 hours of sleep.
No, there's definitely those mutants, and I've worked with them. I was not one of them, but I'm willing to bet. I always wanted to do this study, and Allison, you could probably do this study. I think if you looked at general officers, the ones that like rise through the rank, like the General McChrystals, who have those unbelievable, you read their routines and you're just like, how does he do it? I bet those are your genetic mutants. Because to rise to that level and can just function and be able to carry on an intelligent conversation, and you would see that individual and be like, I know you probably didn't, only got 4 hours of sleep, and yet you just crushed 5 miles and you're like ready to go. Like you're a superhero. Like what's going on? So that's been always my theory is like the senior ranking people are probably those genetic mutants.
I've never thought about that. I think that that's probably right on. And even the senior ranking surgeons that are able to perform and produce over and over and over again. Really. We hate you guys.
I know, don't you? Like,
yes. What do you think is the number one supplement that people should take?
Oh, should take? That's easy. Creatine monohydrate. I mean, I feel like that's such a layup, right? Why would you say anything different in terms of if you look at?
I don't know if I would have picked that.
Cognition?
I might have picked. Yeah, brother. I might have picked vitamin D, or I might have picked omega-3 fatty acids. I don't want you to rethink your answer.
No.
But I want to know.
I came out of Dr. Richard Kreider's lab. If I say anything else besides creatine monohydrate, I feel like
I'll
fired.
I'll get
like excommunicated. And that like that mafia of his students are we roll deep. So no, but I mean I think for all the benefits. But to your point, vitamin D is definitely up there.
Don't go to my point. I want to know
about
creatine. I want to know why creatine, because you said that really fast.
I did say that really fast.
And I want to know the dosing, and I want to know why.
So the muscular health, like we said, okay, so I'm aging. I'm trying to maintain my muscle. I'm trying to maintain my power output, another thing that drops off as we age. So creatine for that, right? But then also cognitively, there's been a lot of nice papers and research on sleep deprivation. And so even for this podcast, I'll admit, so Axel maybe kept up a little bit last night, he got a vote. So I took about 30 grams 4 hours ago before I came over here because I knew I had to be sharp. And that was based off, again, I can't think of the paper. I'm sure we can link it in the show notes.
Darren Candow does a lot of work on that.
Yeah. But the dose was... it was, what was it, 0.3 mgs per kilogram of body weight, and I'm like 85 kgs. So anyway, it's a higher dose than the 3 to 5 grams per day. You're getting more into the 20 grams and above for most people for cognitive, and then it peaks at that like 4 hour mark for
Is there any issue
recall,
with taking it at once, the 30 grams at once for people?
I don't. Some people have gastrointestinal issues with it. The fighter I work with, UFC, Jim Miller. I know sometimes like with his dosing, he likes to split it up. But I don't have that problem. So again, it's the individual in terms of that.
Does one need to do a loading dose anymore? How would you recommend people take creatine?
For most, just the simple 3 to 5 grams a day, because you're going to reach tissue saturation at the end of 30 days. Now, if you had an event that was coming up for whatever reason, you're like, oh, I forgot I had a powerlifting meet 2 weeks from now, and I want to, max. Then I would be like, all right, let's load you up.
Would it be something like 30 grams a day, or
20 grams for most people, probably 20 grams a day. And again, it depends on the size. Are we talking about somebody like who did you have on here? That guy's so massive. He was a Ranger. Justin Leinhard, is that his name?
Yeah, Judd. He's a massive human. Yes, we love Judd.
Yeah, so like somebody
he
like him.
Probably needs 100.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like he's, I know fellow Ranger, I don't know if we ever overlapped, but I wanted to like hate him listening to your podcast because I don't like it when guys are big, muscular, intelligent, and athletic. That shouldn't be allowed, right? Like you should have a hole somewhere in your game. I feel like
just
if you're
pretend
big
like you're dumb or something.
Yeah, right. Like, but he checked all the boxes. But no, it was a great episode. But yeah, so if you have somebody like that, it could be higher.
Okay, fine. Then what's your number one supplement that people waste their money on?
Probably, although not as. I don't see it as much, and maybe just because I'm not in the GNCs and other places, but like fat burners.
Oh,
no?
Are those still a thing?
Right. Like, I don't know, but that's what I thought of like, okay, if there had to be one.
What about testosterone boosting supplements?
Okay, there you go.
You guys could definitely waste your money on that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, you could waste your money and hurt yourself on those is I would say the most dangerous thing. And I have seen that. Did I tell you about that?
No, I want to hear about it.
So, when I was deployed to Iraq, with the Rangers, like there was a case, we had some cases of individuals with, gynecomastia and stuff, and it was a dietary supplement.
Are you sure it was a dietary supplement?
It was a dietary supplement. It was a dietary supplement. At the time, it was called Superdraw. It was a cool name, right? and it was 17 alpha alkylated. So you read the label. What was interesting, guys were taking different stuff. So not everybody was taking Superdrol. They were taking all these different things. But then when I looked at the label, I was kind of, it was a great project because I got to work with the battalion surgeon and go as a dietitian, what else job can I do?
Totally.
That fun. So we were looking, and I remember all the dietary supplements had the same chemical structure. So it was a weak oral anabolic steroid that was being sold as a dietary supplement. But these individuals didn't know. They heard, hey, if I take this, I get strong. And then
Was it converting to estrogen, or what was the?
Yes,
issue?
it was. It was also hard on the liver in terms of, when you're deployed, you can't drink alcohol. But there were some cases where individuals would come back.
Is that true? I did
jaundice.
not know that. You cannot drink alcohol when you're deployed?
What did Shane tell you? Whatever you did. You're not supposed to. Maybe I should say. You're definitely not supposed to. Now, on the way out there, if you're in Kuwait or Qatar, you might have a limit of 1 or 2 beers a day. I forgot what it was. But in theater in Iraq, Afghanistan, you're not supposed to.
That sounds like a really good waste of money on supplements, and then potential leads you into gynecomastia. What do you think? Okay, fine. So what are your thoughts on vitamin D supplementation? Because it seems as if, one of my very dear friends, Dr. Alexis Cowan, she's a light biologist, and she's absolutely against vitamin D supplementation. I'm like, Alexis, why? Because the data from, say, a geriatric lab, when I was at WashU, we tested everyone's vitamin D. We always supplement vitamin D. And I think that there may be some potential controversy. Curious as to what your thoughts are.
My thoughts is always I look at risk to reward, and
pretty sure you're on a paper here with vitamin D. So
yes, that's what I'm saying. And so that was with Kelly Shad. She was one of my students, but a brilliant dietitian, and we pulled medical records and looked at individuals diagnosed with depression and vitamin D levels, right? And I think it was. When we controlled for all factors, if you were vitamin D deficient, you were 22% more likely to be depressed, right?
And this is the paper, the relationship between vitamin D status and depression in a tactical athlete population.
Yeah, and what was cool about that paper, we started with clinics in Texas, right down the road at, now Fort Cavazos, used to be Fort Hood, all the way up to Alaska. And so, and you could see that relationship get stronger as you went further north, right, with less sunlight. We know we have vitamin D receptors in the muscles. We got them in the brain. To me, and again, for my dissertation, I did vitamin D draws at Fort Cavazos, Killeen, Texas, so Central Texas, plenty of sunshine, and 40% were insufficient or deficient. So again,
and how do you define that for the listener in terms of levels?
So what is that? So deficiency is 20, right? Yeah. 20. Insufficiency, is that less than 30? I think off the top of my head.
I can look that up while you're talking. I'll get back to you on
that. But so, we use the basic classifications. Now, what I can answer is hey, what am I looking for optimal? I'm 60 to 80 is kind of where I'm shooting for. So the bottom line is folks weren't optimal. And so vitamin D is relatively cheap. It's an easy lab to get. And so I don't really see, why you wouldn't supplement with D3.
So you don't have any issue with it. And I have to say, I don't either. Again, the data from what I've seen is reasonable that one would take it. And we know that there are issues when people have low vitamin D. Rickets. That's caused by vitamin D deficiency or calcium. And in terms of effectiveness, is it effective orally?
Yes.
And do they have to get vitamin D3 versus D2?
Yeah, vitamin D3 is what you want. That's the active version. Which it brings up a whole nother conversation if you're listening to this and you're military, is a lot of the DoD formularies for some reason carry D2.
I know.
Why
is that? Was it cheaper? Was it by mistake? Do they think they haven't updated it or what?
I wish I had a better answer. We've investigated it and we're tried to change it and it just I don't know if I was the wrong rank, but it was just, you kind of run into the bureaucracy of the system. I think that's a bit of it. But yeah, a lot of military formularies have the D2 version, but D3 is what you want.
Dr. Nick and I have talked all about magnesium and the foods that you need to eat to get it. But let's talk about it as one of the most overlooked nutrients that has a massive impact on your health. Magnesium, and by the way, most of us are not getting nearly enough. In fact, 75% of American adults are deficient, which means there's a 3 out of 4 chance you are too. Magnesium plays a critical role in hundreds of functions throughout the body, from energy production and brain function to stress regulation and sleep. That's why I'm a huge fan of Mellow Magnesium. It is a powerful super blend that helps fill the gaps. Mellow combines highly absorbable forms of magnesium with GABA and L-theanine, 2 amino acids known for their calming, stress-reducing effects. It also, which is amazing, has over 70 trace minerals to support whole body health. If you're looking for something to help you unwind without relying on melatonin, this is a great alternative. It can help you reduce stress, improve sleep, strengthen immunity, boost your mood, all in 1 scoop a day. Be the best version of yourself. And, of course, get 15% off with the code Dr. Lyon. Go to helloned.com/Dr. Lyon. That's HELLONED.com/Dr. Lyon to get 15% off.
So it might be worth investing in that. But again, I look at the risk to reward, and I mean, if you're taking 2,000, 5,000 IUs a day, you're not going to build up to like a toxic level, right? So I don't see why you wouldn't just take that as an insurance policy for most people. Now, if you have your vitamin D levels drawn and you're great, you're sitting at 80, then yeah, you don't need to supplement. Whatever you're doing, you're doing it right.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that there's still controversy around it. And this is from a Mayo Clinic proceedings. Yeah. And basically, did you hear about this? So this was vitamin D supplementation to D or not to D. And there was a trial, so it was the VITAL study, and it was a large randomized controlled trial of daily supplemental vitamin D. So it said they conducted this VITAL study because large randomized controlled trial of daily supplemental vitamin D were lacking, and they were randomized to vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids. And the primary endpoint of the study was first incident, it looks like non-vertebral hip fracture. And what they found, the study found no benefit for fracture risk reduction with vitamin D supplementation. And I will tell you, when this came out, I called the geriatricians, obviously, and they said, we still recommend vitamin D.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, there's other things with just it does more than just rickets, right? Yeah. And then there was a paper, maybe is it using that Vital data? I can't remember. Didn't they look at, there was a paper with omega-3s, and I think they used vitamin D as well, and looked at like telomere length.
I did not see it. I don't know.
But bottom line, I think it was the omega-3s that were effective in slowing the shortening of telomeres, which, whether that's your biological age or not, still kind of...
We did. I did have a patient that wanted to get her telomeres tested.
Yeah.
And she was really happy. She had telomeres that were 10 years younger than her actual age. If it was real, I was signing up.
That's awesome.
I'm afraid to do the test. What about in terms of how could an individual who doesn't want to take vitamin D, how are they going to get vitamin D?
Through, the same sources of omega-3, possibly through fish, cod liver oil. That would be the main way. Mushrooms, but it's I think mushrooms are mostly kind of a D2. It's not as bioavailable. And then, sunlight, right? Like that's the other, which again, and I know there's a whole debate on that, like with, skin cancer and how much sun you should get. I have a family history of skin cancer. So I supplement vitamin D. I still get out in the sun a lot, but I'm going to respect it. And then by orders of my wife, I'm always slathered in sunscreen. She makes sure of it. Same with my kids. So there is that, right?
And basically, it says that the recommendation, according to this, I'm looking at this from UCLA, 8 to 10 minutes of sun exposure at noon produces the recommended amount of vitamin D. Whether that's true or not, it says In the winter, only 10% of the body is exposed. Listen, if you live I grew up in Chicago, I will tell you there is 0% of my body exposed in winter. And this says 10% of the body exposed and nearly 2 hours of sun exposure at noon is needed to produce a sufficient amount of vitamin D.
Yeah, good luck with that if you live in Chicago, Boston,
no
New
thanks.
York, even Washington, D.C. I mean, any of those. So
You can use a vitamin D sun lamp. I have one of those upstairs. I don't need it now that I live in Houston.
Yeah.
But a vitamin D sun lamp, yes, please and thank you. I'm curious as to see what is going to come out if, again, you supplement vitamin D, you can measure it in the blood. Is it as effective, less effective as sunlight? I don't know. I don't know if it produces a variation in the form of vitamin D or not. I don't know if you know that or not.
I have, throughout kind of knowing my blood labs from my military career, I tested low one time. I started supplementing. I haven't tested low since, right? And I just did the, our friend Dan Garner's blood test, that full panel and all like that. And like my vitamin D was beautiful. And I supplement every day.
Amazing. What about organ meats?
Love them. If I can, this might be a conversation. Where in Houston local can we find good organ meats? Because I want to know. But yeah, if chicken liver's on the menu or liver's on the menu, I'm ordering it.
Whole Foods has chicken liver.
Oh, okay.
I think it's called Bell Farm.
But is there a restaurant that makes it? Because I'm lazy sometimes. Is it? We'll have to find a good place around there.
I think chicken liver is amazing. Tons of vitamin D, tons of iron. It was my kid's first food.
And how do you make it?
Stir fry it.
You just stir fry it. Okay.
I will say that my calf liver or anything beyond chicken liver is inedible. It's not edible. It tastes terrible when I do it.
Yeah, you just got to work on the recipe.
Yep. I just have to work on the recipe, but chicken livers with a little bit of bison. So basically we grind chicken livers and bison and we make chicken liver bison burgers.
Oh, I'm going to try that.
You don't even need a multivitamin.
That's, I mean the dose. Well, you put out a great, what was it, like infographic I saw with the liver and the dose of micronutrients compared to other substances. And I mean, there you go.
I cannot take credit for that. That was my team's idea.
That's
Shout out to Sunny and Julia, my team. They were like, okay, we're going to knock this out. I said, please don't make me cook that.
That was great.
And, we can get a lot of these nutrients from Whole Foods, but there are nutrients of concern. Vitamin D, magnesium. What about berberine? Have you heard about berberine?
Yes.
And have you heard that berberine is called the nature's Ozempic?
I mean, that's awesome, right? Anytime you do that. Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't say that.
I definitely would not say that.
Right?
Like, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Yes. If that's your expectation.
Berberine is not the nature's Ozempic.
But there was, I think there was one clinical trial where it did as well as or close to as well as metformin. I mean, it's exciting. And so that's one, I would consider, I would definitely look at.
Berberine does have some good literature on it, and it's a yellow. So according to this, it is a yellow plant dye. That can't be right. It is found in barberry. Did you know that?
No.
Oregon grape. I don't even know what that is. Gold thread. Please, friends, if you're listening to this, correct us because this is what I am reading. And here's what they found. There have been definitely studies on berberine. And what I've seen is that it does have an impact on blood sugar control, lipid metabolism. It does have some anti-inflammatory effects. Doesn't seem to have many side effects. I have not seen any head-to-head studies with metformin, but I wouldn't be surprised that there is some benefit. Again, I actually believe it's probably, there's a genetic potentiation if you have the right enzymes or genes to be able to utilize that. Early on in my career, I was really interested in these genetic SNPs, and it seemed that certain people had a propensity to respond better to various supplements. Again, it's such a complicated field, but to this day, I definitely believe that there are certain responders and non-responders.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, even if you look at some of like the creatine studies, right? Like some people take creatine and it's, well, and then even, there's a genetic component, but then, what's your diet look like as well? Are you consuming a lot of meat and stuff? Well, you might not have a bigger response to creatine as people who consume less, or, and berberine might be the same.
I think that that's absolutely right. And here I've got it. It's derived from the berry of the barberry shrub, in case you were wondering. And
Indian, right? It's Indian.
This is, yes, it is. And this is
India,
in American Family Physician, which is this is a great journal. This came out in 2023. And basically, it seemed as if the data is lacking in terms of it being as effective or nearly effective when it comes to Ozempic. It also says that there has never been at this time a large-scale randomized trial or multi-center clinical trial. And I think that that's interesting. I do think that, listen, metformin came from a plant.
Yeah.
That there is probably really good potential for some of these dietary supplements. Of course, talk to your physician, find out what they got to say.
Well, and then the source of the supplements as well, right? Like that's what, especially, with those plant-based, like we talked about, like where are they grown, where are you getting it from? Is it being tested when it comes to the States to make sure, a cheaper product isn't being used? I remember this was some years back. I don't know if it was chokeberry. It was one of the berries, and it was basically the importer was using a dye to make the anthocyanin numbers look much higher than the berries were providing, right?
Wow.
And then there was some testing, and they figured out, that was what was going on, kind of like with the protein and nitrogen. I think it was in China, the melanin, or putting in this toxic product because it caused the nitrogen spike, and so it's like, oh, we have more protein, but it's like no,
it's fake news. So what Nick is talking about is, in infant formulas, they have to account for the protein number because infants need a certain amount of protein. And what they were doing in China in the formulation is they were adding nitrogen to the formula to show a higher protein number, when in fact it was just nitrogen and it wasn't a dietary protein, it wasn't these amino acids. And similarly, what Dr. Barringer is talking about is the anthocyanins. They are phytochemicals, phytoactive ingredients. That's what makes things very rich colors, whether it's blueberries, the purple anthocyanins, or purple carrots, you name it. Those colors are compounds that are thought to be helpful for the human body. And the amount is typically in relation to the vibrancy.
Yeah. And
they were putting dye in there. That is super lame. And berberine is supposed to be a very rich color. And I have it here. It's this yellow alkaloid. And it's found in a whole bunch of roots and stems of things. And there has been some research. If I'm looking at this, it says most clinical trials found that daily treatment with 500 to 1,500 milligrams of berberine over multiple doses may have some impact when it comes to blood sugar regulation. And, we always have to ask, what's the mechanism of action? And this appears to regulate AMPK, which AMPK would be part of energy homeostasis, the opposite of mTOR. We always talk about mTOR, or I don't, but maybe we do at home. But mTOR is obviously activated in a fed state for muscle protein synthesis, and AMP kinase would, unless I'm misunderstanding it, is what is activated in fasting. Is that true?
Yeah.
So there you have it. Always have to have a mechanism of action. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, again, it's another one of those where, from what I've read about it, I mean, the risk versus reward. If you had a patient who is having a hard time, controlling their blood glucose or wanting to lower their blood glucose, it might be worth a
put them on a higher protein diet.
Yeah, right. Control all
throw
that.
In a little glucose monitor. But I will say, I do think that this brings us to the conversation of, are there multiple ways to get to an end result, and does it always have to be pharmacological? And I think that pharmaceuticals are great. Again,
Yeah.
I'm a clinician. I am not paid by any pharmaceutical company. I think they have their place. And I also think that there is room for natural protocols. We've been using natural protocols in my clinic, in our practice, for years.
That's awesome.
And what you do is you implement the protocol and then you retest the individual. So, for example, H. pylori. H. pylori is a bacteria that can cause an ulcer, can cause gastric cancer. Someone comes back positive. They really don't want to take antibiotics. There's some evidence for mastic gum and all sorts of natural, more natural treatment options. And they want a choice. You try it, you retest it, and it, for many of our patients, there are a lot of individuals where a more natural approach can work.
That's awesome.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, it's awesome that you're willing to try it, because I feel, as you know, like so many physicians, it's, write the script and
no,
you're out the door.
No. But again, our practice is unique. We have a concierge practice, and, we've spent a lot of time looking at protocols and in the literature and talking to experts as to how to get around some of these other things. I will say that there is no replacement for something like an Ozempic, the way that the Ozempic works and these GLP-1s work. Berberine, nothing, metformin, nothing is going to come close to the way that that these medications work at all. Do you test blood sugar? Is that something that you like to monitor, have monitored?
From the practical standpoint of like an A1C, telling the stories, I've used a continuous glucose monitor. Sometimes in my talks, I'll mention it to the audience and be like, hey, it's a tool. I don't recommend, everybody get one, but for me, I wore one for a little bit, and there were some insights in terms of like the order in which you eat your food, and then
what did you learn? I think that's great. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say.
Eating the fibrous plant and protein before you go to your carbohydrate, right?
Right?
You get a more steady release, which again, if you'd have told me, 10 years ago, you're like, hey, Nick, the order in which you eat your food is going to affect your blood glucose. I'd be like, really? But no. There's been research on that. But then for me also, and I don't know if I told you this, stress, how I handle stress. I had some stressful situations, like, with kids. I'm sure nobody has that.
Nobody,
separate
for
them.
sure not.
Kids are fighting, and my blood glucose monitor went off. And I'm like, oh, that's strange.
It went up, right?
Yeah, it went up.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, and so then I got stuck I remember in San Antonio, I got stuck in traffic. I was going to be late to a meeting. And I wasn't yelling, I wasn't cursing, I was just sitting in the car, and my monitor starts going off. I had high blood sugar. And so I was like, wow, I need to, my stress levels affected my physiology. So I started doing box breathing. I started doing
what he's talking about is tactical breath.
Yeah.
Anytime I have a problem and I ask Shane, he tells me two things. Number one, never break rule number one. If you guys want to know what that is, please message me. I will tell you off the record. And number two, oh, honey, you should do some tactical breathing.
I like it.
Which is a 4 count in,
a
hold for 4 counts, out for 4 counts, and you do it for a series of cycles. Andrew Huberman talks a lot about managing breath, and it allows you to control your physiology. It's your nervous system back on track.
It is. I thought it was woo-woo. Because
no way, you guys are doing it before you jump in an airplane.
No, I never did that. I don't know anybody did that.
Maybe SEAL guys do.
Well, the SEAL guys, yeah. Rangers, yeah. If there's any Rangers out there, please come up on the net and tell me if you ever tactical breath. I was just like, God, I hope my chute opens. And like get out the aircraft. Like that would really be a problem if that didn't. Yeah, so I don't ever remember doing tactical breathing. But it does. I mean, it works. And from talking to some other folks, like it's not even like it has to be 4 count, it could be 2, it could be, but it's just focusing on your breath can like help. So I've been doing a lot of that now with 3 kids, a lot of tactical breathing.
I mean, you got it down. By the way, Nick showed up at the park with 8 kids at Leo's birthday party. You showed up 8 kids.
I had 8 kids.
My husband looked over and he goes, oh my God, Nick is an American hero. That is unbelievable.
To be fair, so I love being a dad, but what I love about as much is like being an uncle. Like being an uncle is awesome because you get the experience of like the kids, which I love, but then I don't have to worry about like disciplining my nieces or anything like that. I just like let them let them be.
Do
Just
whatever
like
you
let
want,
them have
kids.
fun. Like, oh, you want ice cream? Let's go. You know. So,
Speaking of ice cream, I do.
Yeah.
This is a real conversation.
Yeah.
Ice cream.
Yes.
I want to know, and where I'm going with this, I have 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
And then I promise to let you go. I want to talk about detox diets and water fasts. Should
Yep.
we be doing them?
Yep.
And when I think about ice cream, I'm thinking about your Ninja because I really want to know if the Ninja works, because that would allow me to make whey protein ice cream.
Yes.
And that leads me into the biggest myths that you seem to always hear about nutrition.
Okay. That's
So,
all I want.
so kick it off with detoxes. Should we be doing it? Should we not? What is it?
No. So detoxes, for those that don't know, if you have a liver and you have a functioning kidneys, that's what they're doing, right? That's their job. Now, I do want to say, if you've been exposed to heavy metals and you're doing chelation therapy, like whole different thing, right?
And then you're talking about a medical detox.
Medical detox,
Yes.
yeah. Putting that to the side. For most people, if you're listening to this and you feel like you need a juice cleanse to flush out the toxins, your issue is probably not toxins, it's TikTok or wherever you saw it, right?
You have the disease called TikTok.
You have the disease called TikTok, and you should probably turn it off and listen to this podcast. No, so yeah, I have yet to find anybody. And then the water only fast. We talked about electrolytes. Electrolyte imbalance, hyponatremia, that's very, that can be very
dangerous.
serious. That can be dangerous. So I don't recommend it with anybody. We don't do any detoxes. We don't do, any water fasts, anything like that.
Which then leads me to the biggest nutrition myths, and does the Ninja actually work?
So the biggest nutrition myths
that you hear from people. Should you dry scoop your protein powder?
Oh, should you dry? No.
Or
no.
Is bone broth a great source of? Are there just a handful of things that you always seem to hear?
I mean, the dry scoop, that's horrible. You might choke, right? Like you don't absorb it any faster. You don't do that. I mean, bone broth is delicious. Whether it like heals your gut, I haven't seen any papers on that. I'm trying to think of any other ones that, we hit seed oils. That's the one. That's probably
the biggest one.
Yeah, that's the biggest one that comes out. Let me think for 1 second.
And if you don't have one, I really want to know about people don't know what we're talking about, the Ninja.
Oh yeah.
So if you don't have any other myths, I want to just highlight something that I think is really awesome. Do you have any myths?
I don't have any other myths. We'll go to
the biggest myth that I always hear is you will get bulky if you lift weights. Or
that's true.
There. I just stepped in, saved your life right now,
Thank you.
Now you are so welcome. The Ninja, when kids are difficult. They go to school and you can protect them. You can eat really healthy at home, and they go to school and my daughter comes home, Mom, the teacher gave me a sugar cookie. It was so good. And I got 2 marshmallows. And you don't want to be like, hey girl, well, you should have said no, because the entire class gets
right.
them. And one of the things I love about what you guys do in your household is you're always looking for ways to improve the food composition of, say, ice cream. And so you went and you got this Ninja, this ice cream maker Ninja, which, by the way, as soon as I saw that, I've just been on like the Costco website. Like, do I pull the trigger? Should I really get it? It's not cheap. But then again, I'm not so sure that A, you've been successful at making ice cream. And 2, I do think that if we were to round it out with, there are healthy options if we can just redefine what we believe is healthy and how we understand and navigate within our environment, that we can really make good choices. So how are you? Do you have any tips for parents at home? And did that Ninja ice cream maker actually work?
It works. It does work. Tips for parents, and part of it is the reason why I got the ice cream maker is it's not just about controlling what's in the ice cream, which I really do like, because we did make, although I don't know if you were there, we didn't use it, but we made a simple chocolate ice cream using Fairlife.
Your daughter seemed to love that one.
Yeah,
yes.
And she loved it and consumed it. And so think about that. If you're a parent, we didn't go to Baskin Robbins. I took Fairlife chocolate milk and blueberries, and my nieces and my daughter, they crushed it and they loved it. But that's just one piece of it. The other piece that I find with like getting kids to eat and try things is you get them involved. So
That's
it's
a great idea. I never thought about that.
The ninja, you should get like ninja on it. But it's an experience. So when I get it out, my kids get excited, the nieces get excited. We hook it up, they're looking at it. What do we put in it? And so it's kind of like a form of entertainment. And it's not cheap, but when you cost out, take 8 kids to Baskin Robbins, I have. It gets expensive, right? And so now I control a little less sugar. You do that a few times, it pays for itself. But also the experience that you get. And that's why I love to cook. That's why I was trying with like the pizza oven.
My daughter loved it. She was like, can we go to Nick's house? They make their pizza.
Yeah, so
never thought about that.
It doesn't always turn out right. But that's like with Sawyer. So my daughter, she's had octopus, she's had cow tongue, she's had all these things at 8 that a lot of kids probably wouldn't eat. But why she had them and she found out whether she liked them or not was she was involved in the process. And then same with Wolf and get them in there. And so that's what I think, like, to parents, because I get this question with people I work with a lot, is because a lot of them have kids. I'm just like, you got to get them involved in the kitchen, which, by the way, it's going to be like twice or 3 times the mess.
4 times.
4 times.
4
okay.
times.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw how much flour I had all in my kitchen
like,
for the pizza. There was like flour everywhere.
Yes, I did.
But
I thought Frosty the Snowman made the appearance or something.
But again, at the end of the day, it's part of like the experience with the kids and the parents. And then you find that, they're willing to try more things versus if you just have them sit there and you make it for them and you put it in front of it and they're like, I don't like that. Can I have this? Sort of thing.
Dr. Nick Barringer, I love everything that you said, and I would say that I might even love that the most. What a great piece of advice, and we're going to start doing that.
Come over. I got it. You can
Don't
borrow
worry,
the
you guys
creamer
are going to
anytime.
clean. You guys are clean on that side. Dr. Nick Barringer, I'm so grateful that you came and shared your knowledge with us. You know what I would love to do? I would love, as controversies come up, for us to do a regular scheduled cadence where we're on here, we're talking about some of the data. I think it would be really valuable.
That would be awesome because I'll just walk over.
That's right. And is your website up and running yet?
Oh, it should be.
All right.
drnickbarringer.com.
Amazing. Really excited to have you in the neighborhood, and we'll chat again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My pleasure being here.
Big thanks to Dr. Nick Barringer for breaking down the military's approach to peak performance. His insights are game changers for anyone looking to optimize strength, endurance, and recovery. Now, I want to hear from you. What's one nutrition strategy from today's episode you're going to try? Drop a comment below and let's discuss. And if you found value in this conversation, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We're bringing you more cutting-edge insights from the world's top experts every week. Check the description for resources and links to Dr. Barringer's research, and I'll see you in the next episode.